very often when I talk to them about exiting their businesses, it really turns them off. It's like, why would I want to exit this? It's a passion project. I'm doing it for fun. I'm doing it because I want to change the world. Yes, I want to make money, but I don't want to think about ending my business before I've even started it. And I've been thinking really hard about how to get across to people that beginning with the end in mind doesn't... Hey, I'm Pam Pryor, and this is the Cash Flow Podcast. We're going to talk about everything related to money in your business. Without further ado, let's hop right in. And welcome back to the Cash Flow Podcast. We've got an awesome episode for you today. In the brews section, we're talking about Southern Tier IPA. We'll get to that soon. That's always first. In the What's News section, we're going to dive into mid-career women in corporate and what they're now doing as entrepreneurs in the world. So I'm really looking forward to that conversation. And then in Buck's Tales, I want to dive into something really important that a lot of people forget when they start businesses, and that is beginning with the end in mind. So we'll see you on the inside. And here we are to check out our beer for the week, and it is Southern Tier IPA. You've seen the picture of it. And it is by Southern Tier Brewing Company, which I'll tell you about in a minute. But first, let's talk about the beer. What it officially says is that it's an IPA, India Pale Ale, and it's hop forward with notes of pine and citrus. And then it's got a light malty flavor that has some Amarillo, Citra, and Simcoe hops in it. Now, what does all that mean in English? Let's find out. All right, let's see how it looks when we pour it. It looks clear on the pour. Let's see here. Yep, it looks clear. Still, that's nice golden color. Definitely not a hazy IPA. I like that a lot. I like the hazy IPAs, but it's really nice to have a nice clear one that almost looks like a good Pilsner. Let's see here. It's actually not really aromatic at all. Not a whole lot of aroma to it at all. So let's see what it tastes like. Let's see. Hop forward. Okay, yep, definitely hoppy on the front of the tongue and a very quick malt. Interestingly, not a ton of flavor that I like. I would have thought with it being that clear, I'd like it a little bit more. And then it kind of deadens on the tongue a little bit. But not that it'll stop me from drinking it, mind you. It's still a good IPA. Let me see here. I can pick out the pine flavor, but not so much the citrus. This would not be at the top of my favorites list, but let's talk a little bit about what they say about the brewery. Southern Tier was born in Lakewood, New York in 2002, so they've been around about 22 years. I am a fan because of the name of the founder, which is Phineas DeMink. I'm sorry, but that name is priceless. Phineas DeMink. So good job, Phineas. They now are popular in 30 different states. So they grew from a very small back lane in upstate New York to having and distributing to 30 states nationwide. And they have a great reputation. This is the first one of theirs I've actually tried. I will tell you, I don't know if it's their only IPA. I'm going to have to do a little research on that, and we'll drop it in the show notes. Right, Francis? Good. But I am not a huge fan. It is a 7.0 ABV, which is the alcohol content, and it is an IPA type. Would be a New England IPA because it's not hazy. I think the California ones are hazy. These are not hazy. You'll notice I don't have trouble drinking it, but I am going to give this is going under 5 on our score system. Yeah. So in the PAM KPI, PAM Beer KPI, PB KPI, is going to actually be on a scale of 1 to 10. I'm going to give this a 4. I am not a huge fan. Maybe I'll give it a 5 because it is an IPA. I do know that I need to leave room on the downside for the darker beers that I'm not a huge fan of. So we'll give it a 5. It will not stop me from finishing it throughout the rest of our show today. So stay tuned because we're going to jump into the news segment, which I think if you are in corporate America or you've recently left corporate America, you will find very interesting. Cheers. And welcome to our news segment. So my producer found a really good article on women at mid-career and what they're doing now across the board. There's a bit of a movement going on. And what's happening is, as they're leaving corporate, they're really redefining entrepreneurship a little bit. So I probably am part of this whole mid-career leaving thing, because what's happening is these women are bringing a whole new type of expertise to the entrepreneurial world, which really excites me for a number of reasons. And the things that the Forbes article points out that I really want to dive in on, and then I'll give my commentary on this, is they dived into the fact that as women leave corporate in mid-career, they're leaving with a few things that the average person just out of the gate doesn't have. The first is they have real experience and in-depth understanding from whatever their career was in. I think about it, of course, in terms of finance professionals. But if we've had a finance career for 20 years, 10 years, 20 years, you've got a good bit of experience built up there, exposure to a lot of really good tools. And the second thing they point out is you come out of corporate with a pretty vast network of anything you might need to help an entrepreneur as a service provider, or as somebody like a finance professional who comes out to be a finance professional for entrepreneurs. So in other words, what I did when I left corporate was set up my business to do, at the time, freelance CFO consulting for entrepreneurs. So I left with a good 20 years of solid experience in finance. But then also the other thing that happened was I left with a really big network of contacts. And it's all contacts that the current day entrepreneur, starting from nothing, doesn't necessarily have access to if they haven't left corporate themselves. So that's a really big deal, to come to the table as a provider of some kind of service with a network of people that you can connect entrepreneurs to. That's something I didn't realize had as much value as I now realize it does have. But the last thing, the third thing they point out, which I think is just so significant, is the life experience that you have after not just having been in corporate or another job for 10 or 20 years, but having lived 10 or 20 years. And what I mean by that is we've probably failed at something or many things, and we've stood back up, and we know what life's about, and we know you get kicked sometimes and you always stand up. You've been through the things. The word maturity, that is actually kind of, it's a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's another word for you're getting old in corporate. And what it brings with you is sort of a bad connotation in corporate. And that bad connotation is not only you getting old, so you might not know the tech that's around. So you also are probably getting paid a lot because you've been on the payroll for a long time. So they use the term mature to describe people who are getting up into their later 40s, 50s, 60s, and have been in the workplace for a while. And it's honestly known by a lot of us corporate types as a bad word. Like, oh, I'm at the mature point in my career. That kind of means, hey, you could be on the docket for us kicking you out of here because we can hire some young spring chickens, which is all great. You definitely want to refresh the workforce and make sure you bring in all the new ideas and technology. But as the person on the mature side of that scale, it's like, well, okay, I guess I've run my time. I started in a mailroom at 17 years old, so I got to appreciate both ends of that scale. But the cool thing about that word maturity, that includes all that life experience and usually a higher salary in corporate, becomes something that can be really valued in the entrepreneurial community. So mature now means, and I laughingly call it, I don't know if Francis will cut this or not, but I laughingly call it, people just need the gray hair in the room. And you've got a lot of young folks out here who are starting fantastic businesses. I've been doing this now for 7, 8 years with entrepreneurs, and I love it because the ideas and the energy and the way that they're giving back and using their companies to make the world a better place to live. It's like doing business right. It's all the things I've always wanted to know and do in business. And it's wonderful to support them, but they don't have a gray hair in the room, right? They don't have somebody who can say, hey, you need to look at A, B, C, and D. We still need to keep running at your momentum and fulfilling your mission and doing all of those things. But here are a few things you can put in place that'll make this a smoother ride for you in the long run, because we've been there and we've seen it. So I'm saying we as mid-career women who are redefining entrepreneurship, but I really related to the article that Francis pointed out to me this week. So I wanted to talk about that. If you are a woman who has left corporate and you're having hesitation, or you're feeling a little insecure about the value you can offer to an entrepreneurial world, I need you to shake that shit off, because what you bring to the table is highly valuable, and the industry of entrepreneurs that's out there today really needs it. What you'll be hearing from me a little later in the year is we're actually going to be putting together a certification for finance professionals who are leaving corporate, because there are some very unique things you need to do as an entrepreneur, and I learned the hard way. It took me 7 years to figure some of it out. So we're condensing all that down into a course and certification that essentially a turnkey kit for when you leave the corporate world as a finance professional, how you can land and build a business and start basically a brand new career for yourself that leverages everything you've put in to that entire career you had in corporate. So this really resonated with me, and I would love to know if any of you who are watching this not only hit like and subscribe to help us get more of this content out, but drop a comment down below and let me know if you're one of these mid-career professionals, and if you're either thinking of leaving corporate or you already have, and some of the unique and really special identifiers that you have or struggles that you have in really recognizing the value that you bring to an industry of entrepreneurs that really needs you. So that's this week's news. Go grab the Forbes article. It's a really, really good article titled Mid-Career Women Redefining Entrepreneurship. And speaking of entrepreneurship, in the next segment, I want to really talk about one of those things that as a mature woman, I bring out of corporate into the entrepreneur world, which is when people are starting businesses, they need to start with the end in mind. And there's always a lot of resistance to that, but we're going to cover that in our next segment, the Bucks segment. So one of the things I noticed with new entrepreneurs is that very often when I talk to them about exiting their businesses, it really turns them off. It's like, why would I want to exit this? It's a passion project. I'm doing it for fun. I'm doing it because I want to change the world. Yes, I want to make money, but I don't want to think about ending my business before I've even started it. And I've been thinking really hard about how to get across to people that beginning with the end in mind doesn't mean that you're saying, I'm going to hate this business, I want to get out of it. It does mean, however, that you recognize that you're about to build something that has value. There's nothing sadder than someone who opens a business and runs it and then just shuts the doors cold, okay? And the reason I say that is usually when they just shut the doors and don't look for a buyer or look for an investor, then they're probably throwing away as much value that they've built as they've already taken out of the business. What do I mean by that? Well, if you start and run a business, you make revenue, and at some point you start getting profitable, and you have profit every year. And that's the money you make from your business. But what you're really doing behind the scenes, you may not even be aware of it, is you're building a business engine that can run itself. And once you've done that, that thing takes on a whole new set of values. Not values, it takes on a whole new value type. And the value type is your exit value. And what this means is that when somebody goes to buy a business, what they're actually buying is the next few years of profitability or cash flow. Okay, that's making it really simple, but that gets the point. So let's just take as an example that you have a business that you start and you run it for 5 years, and every year for those 5 years, you make out of the bottom line of that business $200,000. So over the 5 years, you make $1 million. Now, if you just shut the door on that business and walked away, you will have made $1 million. Not a bad deal. But here's the thing. If you actually went to sell that business now, and that business can reliably make $200,000 a year, then you could sell that to somebody who will actually pay you for the next 2, 3, 4, or 5 years of profit. So I could actually say, hey, I'm going to close my business now. Would you like to buy it? It makes $200,000 a year. It'll do that forever. You could possibly grow it even bigger. All I want for it is, $1 million to cover the 5 years of cash flow and profit it'll make for you over the next 5 years. And anything you do over and above that will all be yours. And now I've made my second million from that business. Now, those numbers aren't exact and it all varies based on your industry and who you negotiate with. But the really important point I want to get across is if you just run your business to run your business and then someday you decide to stop and close the doors, you're probably throwing away at least a quarter to a half of the value you actually worked so hard to create. So what does it mean, begin with the end in mind? It's not really difficult to do. There's just a few things you want to address so that as you get towards the end of your business life cycle, or when you're going to be running your business, it's ready to sell. It's ready to go, and it'll get you the most you possibly can for it. Also keep in mind that exit doesn't necessarily mean that you sell it. Maybe you're leaving it for the next generation. Well, that's an asset with value to them. So again, you don't just want to close the doors. There are any number of things you can do when it's time for you to get out of your business. That doesn't mean just closing the doors. So what are the 3 areas that you can focus on early on in your business to make sure that you are beginning with the end in mind, or beginning with this expectation that you're going to build value beyond when you are working in the business, value for you beyond when you're going to be working in the business? And those 3 areas are mental prep. You need to prepare yourself mentally for exiting your business, which is why I'm having so much of this little lecture on the front end, because I don't want people to react so violently to that word exit. It's not a bad word. The second is you need to make sure your processes and systems are ready to go and can be run by somebody else. And the third thing is the financial preparation. You know, I couldn't leave that out. Cheers. So, what do I mean by that? Let's go from the bottom back up to the top. Hi, Murph. I guess he smelled the beer. For financial preparation, all I really mean is keep your financial records in order. It doesn't have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to be the most beautiful financial model that was ever built. But get a bookkeeper from the very beginning and keep your books for your business separate, complete, balanced, taxed, everything separate from your personal finances. Because that way you clearly are building an asset. There's a lot of other benefits to doing that, which I go into on various other episodes of this podcast. But most notably, when it's time to do something with it, you have a financial history that's clean and crisp and literally tells the story of your business and how it makes its money. So that's one thing. You want to make sure that you start with good financials and maintain keeping good financials throughout your entire process. And it's not as horrible as it sounds. You just need to get a good bookkeeper. And we have resources all over the place. And I know Francis will drop one down here in the show notes that on how you actually make sure you find the right bookkeeper for you. But it's a very small investment to make sure that you get the most out of this thing when you go to sell it. Moving back up the ladder to the second item, we're talking about processes, systems, and people. Now, I've written a whole book about this, so it can get very detailed. But at a very high level, you want to make sure that whatever the business is that you're in can run smoothly with the people, systems, and processes that you have in place. And that sounds really simple. But what you will find when you go into any business that you might be about to buy or analyze is that very often it's overlooked. So there are multiple people doing the same job. There are people doing work that never actually is used for anything. There are wasted money on subscriptions and dues. There's software that doesn't even work anymore. People try to fix problems by patching it with software instead of fixing the processes. So what you really do want to do inside your business is understand and draw out every single process, from how you get your customers to how you keep your customers to how you exit your customers. So it's everything from marketing to operations to customer service to offboarding. And if you have those processes documented, the value of your business automatically goes up. And I'm going to say, you can quote me on this actually, at least 25 to 50%. I have seen documented processes take the value of a business up 100%. Because what you're basically doing is handing a recipe to the next person saying, Here's how you run this thing. Just keep doing this and you'll be fine. You know you'll make at least what I'm making here in this business now. So that is something you really want to pay attention to. First, the finances. Second, that your processes are clear and clean and documented. You have a lot of time to work that out, but if you have that end in mind, then all of the decisions you make at every stage of growth will automatically tend you towards that direction of having all of your processes very clearly defined in your business. Okay, so we've automatically elevated your value because we have solid financials. We've automatically elevated your value because you have good, clean processes. What's the last thing? And the reason I saved it for last, even though I put it first on the list, is mental preparation. The hardest thing about selling your business is going to be your own head. And it's going to mess around with you in a number of ways. But the biggest thing I will tell you is I don't care how good the friend or the person is that you're going to be selling this business to and how well you know them and all of the things that make you think this is going to be an easy, simple, and quick process. You need to get yourself out of that headspace. Selling your business is something you need to mentally gird for because you're selling your baby, okay? Nobody is going to hold your baby as valuable to yourself as you do. So the very first thing that every entrepreneur needs to be prepared for is you're going to have a value for your business in your head. You're going to think it's going to be worth, let's just make an example, $10 million. The rest of the world is not going to see it that way. The rest of the world is going to see it as a cash flow machine and how much cash that machine is going to generate for them and what they can do to leverage that cash. It has nothing to do with how much sweat and blood you put in for the last 5, 10, 15, or 20 years. So you need to set yourself up to understand that nobody is going to value it as much as you do. And don't be offended when you talk to an investment banker or you talk to a potential buyer and they give you a number that's half or less of what you think that business should be worth. Now, that does not mean you cave in negotiations. It just means you keep your mind open to how much of your valuation of your business is emotional and how much of the valuation of your business is factual numbers that the next guy in line who runs your business can actually leverage and get value from. And that step alone is so, I've seen it trip up so many people. I've seen people who could get really good value for their businesses literally walk away from the table because they believed erroneously that the business should be worth 2, 3, or 4 times that much. Okay? Now, what I will tell you is that entrepreneurs have good instincts. So I never say to an entrepreneur or a business owner, you're wrong about that. Because business owners know their businesses inside and out. So this is not a challenge to a business owner's true understanding of their business and its value. What this is a challenge to that portion of the valuation that you're assigning because you can't filter out all the sweat, blood, and tears you've put into building this thing. So I will tell you that almost every single time I've done a business exit, it's come in somewhat significantly less than the entrepreneur's original thought about how valuable their business is, with one exception. And that one exception was a gentleman who had built up a medical practice and literally did the numbers to come up with his valuation for that business, and then said arbitrarily, I'm going to tack 10% on top of that, and that's what we're going to go to market for. That business sold for exactly what he wanted to get for it. Every other business that I've worked with that has tacked on these emotional factors into their valuation has not sold for anywhere near what the entrepreneur thought the original value was going to be. So the front half of this segment was to tell you, prepare to have the exit in mind and know that you're building value and you should get something for it. The second half of this episode is to tell you, recognize that the only facts around valuation that matter are the financial metrics. What is the buyer going to get from it? Now, this doesn't take into account if you're passing it down to family and that kind of thing. That's a little bit different. But they may take your brand, they may take your processes, they're going to see it as a money-making machine. And that's what they want to pay you for, is your money-making machine, not for everything that you happen to have put into it. So that's just a little bit of a warning to be prepared for that. It's the biggest challenge I've seen entrepreneurs have to face when it's time to sell. So mental prep, making sure the processes and people are in place that can run after you're gone. And 3, making sure that you just have good books and records. 3 really simple things you can do at the very beginning of your business to prepare for when you're going to exit it and not leave a whole bunch of money on the table that should be in your pocket. That's it for today. We're going to dive into exits a little bit more in depth as we go on in our season, but I just wanted to scratch the surface here today to say there's some things you can do if you're one of these women leaving corporate right now, you're going to start a business, a few things to think about as you start up your business. Have a great week, and we will see you next time on Cash Flow. Thanks so much for watching the Cash Flow Podcast with us. We want to bring more and more of this to you, so please like, share, subscribe, comment, so that we can keep bringing more of this content to you.